Welcome to the second part of the lecture on working scientifically. We will start with the second part regarding literature search. So, how are you going to tackle the big challenge, how to search for literature and how to search for the work of other researchers? And after that, I will show you how you can evaluate what you found and how you can assess if you want to use it in your thesis, in your research. And in the end, I will give you a little outlook what peer review means, how a peer review process works, and what it means and why you should keep an eye on papers that are peer reviewed, or be a little bit worried if papers are not peer reviewed, and so you can understand better what does it mean to be peer reviewed. So let's start. So at first you have to search for the work of other researchers. And therefore you have several search strategies and also tools that can support you on your search. So first you have your topic, you have an idea what you want to do, and the first step should be to get a first overview what already happened out there. So limit yourself in time in order to not get lost with this first overview gaining. It's also a wise idea to focus on new publications in order to start with cutting edge research, but also keep in mind that new not always means better. Often there are several papers that are very good, that are older, and all of the new papers are referencing to those papers. So it's also wise to search for meta studies and review papers and summary papers. Those summarize a lot of the work of others, and you can use those to gain an insight, okay, where is the research field in total moving, and what are the questions that they are asking, and maybe also what questions already get solved. Define what you need to get started and where you will stop. So it's always wise to have a starting point. So what I am trying to find out today, what do I search for, what do I want to know? And if you have defined that, then you can also define, okay, when will I stop today with working and digging through research papers. It's always also wise to have that, at least a little bit, to not get lost in the process and use a lot of time to read through a lot of papers, and in the end forget to research on your own. And as I told you in part one, a lot of students tell me that they run out of time. And so if you start calculating or start planning, not calculating, your time, then this can help you. And also it's a wise decision to dig through the literature list, the bibliography at the end of papers that already took a similar research approach like you want to do. Because those will reference those high impact papers, or might reference to those high impact papers, to these former papers that they base their work on. And maybe you can start your research also based on those information, based on those papers. And from time to time, question yourself, is it already enough what I found? So you are reading through a lot of papers and maybe you're finding 30 papers describing the same thing, then maybe it could be a wise decision to stop there and reassess, okay, what do I need to get started with my own work, and try to focus your search on another topic and another part of your research topic. And document your search for yourself. That means from day one on. And I really can only say to you, this is a wise idea to start documenting what were you reading, make some notes, write down some keywords. That way it will be much easier for you to find those papers you are reading 4 weeks ago when you really need them. Yeah, you're starting with your research, you're reading a lot, and then in the end you know, I was reading something but I don't know where, and boom, you waste some hours to find this paper you were reading 4 weeks ago. So document what you're reading, document your search for research, and list papers, as I told you, list papers that you want to use or that you can imagine using in your thesis in the end. And sometimes it's also a good point to go through this list from time to time and re-evaluate, okay, do I want to use this paper or not, or is it potential source for my thesis or not? And I can also recommend to you practice skim reading. So while reading through papers, every niche researcher has its own strategy how to read through a paper, and you have to find yours too. A lot of researchers start by reading the title, maybe reading through the abstract, and then they scroll through the paper, having a look at the figures, having a look at the tables, trying to understand what did they do in this paper. And if they still find it interesting, then maybe they read a little bit more about the results or maybe the introduction. But don't try to read every paper you find out there, because you will not finish reading through papers. So practice skim reading. In German it's Querlesen. That means you save a lot of time. And then it's also wise while skim reading, making annotations, writing down some keywords, because that way you know where you want to dig deeper the next time. For example, when you're writing this part where this paper could be interesting, then you can read again this paper in more detail. And tools for your search can be, for example, Google Scholar. A lot of people are using Google Scholar. I'm also using it. And there you can search for keywords. You can also search for titles. You can also search for papers you read 4 weeks ago and forgot the name of. And you can also search for authors there. So it's a pretty potential tool and a good tool to have an overview what's happening there, and also try to find out which authors wrote which paper, and search for scientific literature. Another way to search for literature in a similar way is Web of Science. Web of Science requires a registration, so it's up to you if you want to register there or not. You can do that, and mainly it does the same as Google Scholar, but sometimes you get better results with Google Scholar, sometimes with Web of Science. Other tool that I'm using a lot is Connected Papers. I like it a lot because in Connected Papers you can put in a DOI, so a document object identifier. That's a number, an identifier for scientific work. So you have a paper, and each paper has its own unique identifier, unique DOI, and with this number you can always reference to this paper, and you can copy this DOI and put it into Connected Papers, and then you have a graph visualization what papers reference to this paper, and also what other papers did this paper reference to, and you get an graph visualization, and that way you get a good and fast overview what is happening out there and who is referencing who, and maybe you also discover that way high impact, high important papers you should take into account in your thesis. So try it out. It's free. You can register for it, but you don't have to. And you can also start your research with that, and you have read like 5 papers, something like that, and you say, hey, okay, this is interesting, then check with Connected Papers, what papers are they referencing to, and what papers reference on your paper that you were reading. And more information about literature review, about literature search, you have also by the library of the university, and I have put you a link down here in the PowerPoint slides, and try to use them too. They can also help you with your literature search, but in the end you have to do the search and the work. They can't do that for you. Now, how do you evaluate what you are reading right now, what you're reading in your paper is really worth the effort and the time to read it? And how do you select your sources for your thesis in the end? So there are different criteria you can apply to try to assess if this is a good scientific work, if it's a good paper, and if it's worth the time and effort to use it in your thesis, because what you're referencing to is also defining how good your own research is in the end. So one point you should look for is in what journal did they publish. So there is also a ranking system of journals. The ranking means more or less the quality of this journal. There are a lot of journals that are not good, that are only, I would say they are only trying to make money with it, but they are also like very, very good ranking journals out there, like Nature, and that have a high reputation in the research community. So papers out of those high reputation journals normally are better than those of those predatory journals, for example. So classification is with grades with A+, A, B, and C. And one of these rankings is the JIE. So just Google for JIE, and then you find a ranking of different journals, and you can also search for your journal. You are from the paper you're reading right now, can search for it there and have a look at the journal ranking. There's also publishing journals like Elsevier and MDPI, but not all of the journals are publishing journals. There's also something that's called pre-publishing. So there are possibilities for researchers to publish, to pre-publish papers that, for example, will be on a review, and they already publish it on certain platforms. And be aware of predatory journals. Also, when you're working scientifically, if you want to publish something, there are journals that want to use your work to make money with it, which is okay if they also offer you some benefits from it. Yeah, but if it's only for them, then keep that in mind, and also keep in mind that sometimes or often the scientific quality of those journals is way worse than those of good and normal publishing journals. Another aspect you should take into account is the article type. So there is classical research and analysis paper, but there are also papers that are covering more methods and data. So depending on what you want to find out and what you're looking for, keep that in mind that some articles are different in what they focus on. And then the third type is those review, meta, and summary articles, and those are especially helpful when you start with your work and you want to gain an overview what's happening out there. Then try to focus, or I would suggest to focus on review, meta, and summary articles. Citations, maybe you heard of it. Citations are very important. It's like the money of the science fields. It's a measurement of a reputation and also measurement of impact. So when a paper has a high number of citations, then it's more important to the insight gaining, because more other papers or more researchers are referencing to it. And if they reference to it, then it means, okay, they draw some information, some insights from this other paper, from this formal research, and then it's maybe also important for you. And what worked for a lot of others maybe works for you too. And but you have to keep in mind that number of citations is one part, but number of citations and quotations without self-quotations is also important, because some researchers are publishing and then referencing all the time to themselves, and that way it's like a little bit diluted. And there's also this Hirsch index, the H index, and that is an description of the number of citations of the impact of a researcher. And then there's also the I-10 index. So there's a lot of different indexing going on out there. And keep in mind that those can help you identify the high impact, high value papers you want for your thesis. And if you have a paper you want to use information from, then also keep in mind to check the acknowledgements. That means that the researchers have an affiliation or a conflict of interest with their work. So are they working, for example, for, I don't know, governmental organizations? Are they working for a company? Do they get a lot of funding from companies? Keep in mind the tobacco companies were financing a lot of medical research. And today we would say that this influenced also the results of those scientific papers, if they are really scientific papers. But yeah, try to keep that in mind and check the acknowledgements and try to think, okay, why did they write what they wrote? Is it really an objective research work they did, or is it like a little bit subjective and predefined their results? And yeah, then you can also check for transparency and accessibility. So do they have some badges or awards, and do they publish their data, for example? Do they publish their method? Do they publish their code? Do they have a supplementary? If a paper and researchers try to hide those, then it mustn't be bad, but could mean that something shady is going on, but often it's also because they don't want their work to be publicly available and that way gain an advantage. But yeah, it's better if you have access to that, because then you can understand more in detail what they are doing, and it's good scientific practice to also publish your method, your data, and your code today. Now I have a little example for you how you can assess different papers, and I want to try to do this example with you. So I have 4 papers. One of them is German speaking, but all of the others are regarding nuclear energy. And you see here that the second paper is not published in a journal, but it's published by DIW Berlin. And you already see that, for example, the first paper, they have a Google Scholar site score of over 170. That's from 2014, so you have to keep that in mind when you look at citations. If it was published in the actual year, so or 1 year ago, then maybe the paper does not have that much citations as a paper that was published 10 years ago. Yeah, because in this 10 years it can accumulate a lot of citations. A newer paper will have mostly less citations. But you see 170 citations, year 2014, and they have no acknowledgement regarding financing. The second one you see, okay, it's DIW Berlin. They are not a scientific journal, so it's its company doing mainly research they get paid for, but still pretty good, I would say. And you can also see in the case of number 3 and 4, they have, for example, number 3, they have well-known researchers in the field of industrial ecology, for example. You know T. Gradle, and you know who he is, and that way you can also say, okay, it must be at least not that bad if he is acknowledged there and had a look at it, and even with an citation of 15 only, could be also interesting to have a look at it. And as I told you before, there are different indexes for journals you can check. For example, in this case, you have an H index of the journal with 34. It's not that high, but Environmental and Science and Technology is a well-known journal with 425 in the H index, and also with a high impact factor, and SJR index is also not that bad. And that way you can find out if the journal is good or not. You also have to keep in mind that you can't compare a journal from industrial ecology, for example, with a medical journal, because industrial ecology, the community is way smaller and it's not it's not that known. So there will be less citations than, for example, if you publish Nature Medical or some high impact, high some research field where there's high fluctuation of people, a lot of people writing there, then maybe you have more citations. But it's good to have these indicators to get a feeling of what's happening. And if you look back at those 4 papers, it's also interesting to check, okay, how much time was there between the receiving, the revision, the acceptance, and the publishing of the paper. So if it's very, very short term, so a few days, then especially for review and acceptance, this could mean that there was no peer review, or that it was very short, or it could mean that the paper was pretty good, but normally it's more that the review was not that in detail. And if it took them like several months or years, that could mean that the review process was very long, and that they had different or multiple reviews. They had to change a lot at the paper. Could be. It's always just an indication. And but you can have a look at it, and that way also assess, okay, how good is the paper. Normally good paper, but that's more of a feeling you get when you work a little bit longer in the research field. And you can always ask also if you have something where you have a look at it and then say, okay, it's like a little bit strange. You can also ask me or the other colleagues here, and we will also try to help you assessing it, and also try to talk to your other fellow students and discuss those questions if possible. And I promised you that we will have a look at the peer review process, and I copy pasted you here and a figure from Wiley, and they had a very good overview what peer review means and what different peer review models exist. So peer review is normally that you write your scientific work, your paper, and then you submit it to the journal, and the journal says, okay, we don't know anything about your research topic because we are a journal and not a scientific authority. So they take your paper and they send it to a reviewer. The reviewer will read through your scientific work, try to understand it, and then make annotations and check if everything's going right there, and you followed scientific principles. And sometimes this can be very in detail and very good, because it helps you to make your paper better. Yeah, and there are different models also. Yeah, depending on what is the need of the journal. So single blind review, that the author does not know the identity of the reviewer, because if it would be known, then the author could influence the reviewer to say, hey, let me go through, or something like that, or it could fire up some resentments in the process. The double-blind review means that the reviewer doesn't know the identity of the author, and the author not the identity of the reviewer. Because if the reviewer knows who is the author, then it could also mean, okay, I know him or I know her, and that could also fire up some resentments, and someone could say, okay, I don't want this paper because this is my enemy, or they could say, yeah, okay, just go through with the paper and everything's fine because it's a friend of me. And so you don't want that. You don't want personal relationships to block the review process. And triple blind review would be that the reviewers are anonymous, and the author's identity is unknown to the reviewers, but also to the auditors. So no one knows no one, and that way you also try to limit the influence that maybe an editor had some problems with an author, or that the authors messaged the editor and try to convince him, and so on. An open peer review means that the identity of the author and the reviewer is known by all participants, and they also work together in this peer review. So it's easier if you know who wrote this article to just ask him, hey, what did you mean with that? And then in the end you want to have better scientific results, so it makes sense to work together there. But all of those different models have their pros and cons. And the transparent review model, so I noticed that you weren't able to see the transparent review model, or the transparent peer review, so I changed the camera so you can read it. In the case of the transparent peer review, the review report is also published with the article, and the reviewers can choose if they want to share their identity. And that way it's pretty cool, because then you can see, okay, what did they highlight? Did the authors change something based on these on the review, of the review, or did they say no, okay, we don't want to change it? And that way you can also understand a little bit better what was the process of this research here. It's a little bit like this history of changes you have on Wikipedia in a smaller and similar way. But that way it's always important to keep in mind, okay, what peer review model had they, and where are the pros and cons, and you can learn a lot from those, and also try to understand a little bit what happened back at the journal and on the way to the final publication of the paper. So this was part 2, and we will see each other in part 3 for the next part of this lecture.